I'm married and pregnant. Now my husband wants a divorce and demands that I disappear. I want to share my Diana story. Diana, I want to share my story as a cautionary tale so that others can learn from my mistake. And my husband Paul was 28. We had been in a relationship for almost 3 years and had been married for a year. My husband is a hard-working man. Hard-working man, a great provider, and a wonderful, loving spouse, everything I had ever dreamed of. About a year into our marriage, my husband had a construction project that required him to be out of town for 3 weeks, including 2 weekends. During this time, we had daily FaceTime conversations and exchanged numerous texts because we both missed each other. On the first weekend my husband was gone, 2 of my single friends invited me to join them at a local club. To join them at a local club. At first I declined their invitation, but they insisted, saying they wanted me to be their designated driver because they were going out for a few drinks. I finally relented, but I didn't tell my husband, mother, or older married sister because it would have. We arrived at the club around 10:30 p.m. and the place was already crowded with people. The place was already bustling with people dancing and enjoying drinks, and my friends quickly immersed themselves in the fun. While I stayed on the sidelines at a round, high-top table, simply watching their dancing During one of the breaks in the dancing, my friends brought their dancing partners back to our table to rest and chat. During this time, another man, whom we'll call Joe, joined us for conversation. When my friends and their dance partners returned to the dance floor, Joe stayed at the table with me and we struck up a conversation. As the night wore on, my girlfriends got pretty drunk and started making scenes in the club. Joe had to help me get them to my car and generously offered to drive with me to drop them off at there. Since he had come to the club with his friend, I agreed to drop him off at his house After dropping off my friends, I drove Joe back to his apartment and he suggested that we continue talking as friends. At first I hesitated because I was happily married, but he insisted and said, "Come on, just for another 15 minutes." I reluctantly agreed, knowing it was wrong and foreseeing what might happen. After only a few minutes of talking, Joe kissed me on the lips and things started to happen. Softly on the lips and things quickly escalated to the point where we became intimate just 5 minutes later. I immediately realized the gravity of my actions and told Joe that I could never see or speak to him again because I was happily married and feeling overwhelmed with guilt. He expressed his understanding and regret and acknowledged that he, too, had made a mistake. That he, too, had made a mistake by becoming involved with another man's wife. We did not exchange contact information. We both lived in Los Angeles, about 20 miles apart, so the chances of our paths crossing again were slim. I foolishly thought I could get away with this one-time indiscretion, but I was wrong. Several days went by and my period was overdue. It didn't arrive until a week later, when my husband returned. At home, we quickly resumed our loving relationship, but I carried this dark secret within me. Pregnant, the baby belonged to Joe, since he hadn't used protection, while my husband and I had always desperately used protection. I went to the drugstore to buy a home pregnancy test and my worst fears were confirmed. I was pregnant with Joe's child. Overwhelmed and disgusted with myself, I needed to confide in someone, so I arranged a meeting with my mother and sister to share When I told my mother and sister what had happened, they reacted with deep disgust and anger. They both had deep affection for my husband and could not understand why I would engage in such behavior. Our entire family was devout Catholics and we were all committed to our faith. Infidelity was a taboo subject. Taboo, considered a truly shameful act. I understood that from that point on I would be an outcast within my own family. Despite our Catholic faith, I confessed to them that I intended to leave because I couldn't risk losing my husband. My plan was to get an abortion the next time my husband was out of town, keep it a secret from him, and continue our relationship as if nothing had happened. My mother and sister objected vehemently to my decision. To be honest with my husband, and if I didn't tell him within the next 24 hours, they would meet with him and reveal the truth. Within the next 24 hours, they would meet with him and reveal the truth. I knew deep down that they were right and I asked them to come. When I told my husband that I needed their support, they agreed, and the next day we all gathered in our apartment. Eagerly awaiting my husband's return from work, when he walked through the door, he greeted us warmly, called out his three favorite ladies and gave us hugs and kisses. It brought tears to my eyes. He noticed my tears and the solemn expressions on our faces and immediately asked what was wrong. What happened? Is everything all right? I had something important to discuss and that he should sit down. He complied and sat down across from me on the couch. He held both of my hands, and surprisingly, he did not react with anger, but let go of my hands. My mother and sister were in tears as I begged for his forgiveness. I said all the typical things people say when they've been unfaithful, like I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, I'll do anything for you, etc. I expected him to yell, use hurtful words, and demand details about the affair, but instead he remained silent. Instead, he remained completely silent, which made me feel even worse. Silent, his eyes fixed on the floor, tears streaming down his cheeks. Sister got up to hug him and they were all crying. I felt terrible and totally disgusted with myself after taking a moment to collect myself. After taking a moment to collect himself, he went to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, dried it with a towel, and returned to the living room. As he re-entered the room, I stood up to comfort him, but he raised both his palms and quietly said no. He calmly explained that he needed some time to think things through for a few days. I continued to try to get him to open up but he remained silent. He packed his suitcase and left. I asked where he was going and he replied that he would. Over the next week, I bombarded his phone with voicemails and texts. I expressed my grief and my desire for him to be a father to my child, but unfortunately he never responded. A week later, I received a call from his attorney informing me that my husband had filed for divorce. I was utterly devastated and sought comfort from my mother and sister. Assured me that they would support me through this difficult situation and during my pregnancy, but they made it clear that they were not pleased with me and were fully on my husband's side. They even mentioned their willingness to testify on his behalf. Willingness to testify on his behalf during the trial if I chose to contest the divorce over the next 2 weeks. I continued to call and text my husband, pouring out my love and pleading for the opportunity to meet in person. Unfortunately, he never responded. Instead, he sent me a message through his attorney expressing his wishes for me and our baby, but asserted his need to move on with his life without me. About 2 months later, we all gathered at the courthouse for the hearing when I saw my husband for the first time. When I saw my husband for the first time since he left, I couldn't hold back my tears and tried to run toward him. However, my mother and sister held me back and comforted me since I was not contesting the divorce and we had few assets to divide. The hearing was brief, and as we left the courtroom, I tried to approach my husband again, but his lawyer ushered him out a side door. Ushered him through a side exit into a conference room to keep us apart. Update: fast forward 2 years and I have been living with my parents and raising a beautiful baby girl. My mom, sister, and dad have been incredibly supportive. I couldn't have made it through this challenging experience without them. I recently started a part-time job at the local library, with plans to transition to full-time once my child is old enough to attend school. My ex-husband has moved on with his life and found a new girlfriend, and he seems very content. I'm really happy for him, but at the same time I carry a deep sadness inside of me. Despite the joy my daughter and the love I have for my family, there's a significant void in my heart due to the loss of my wonderful husband. After the divorce, I reached out to Joe and informed him of my pregnancy. Underwent a NIP, a non-invasive prenatal test that confirmed him as the father. He agreed to pay child support, and he has. However, I have no romantic feelings for him and, in fact, harbor resentment for the disruption he caused in my life. For the disruption he has caused in my once beautiful life, I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband about a week ago. At Walmart, as I rounded the corner of an aisle pushing my daughter in a shopping cart, I suddenly found myself face to face with him. Face to face with him, it took me completely by surprise and I felt like I couldn't breathe. At that moment, my daughter flashed a smile and held out her little hand to him while mumbling a few words and showing him her toy. He kindly said, "Hello, beautiful girl, how do you like to see him and my daughter together?" I was deeply saddened and tears welled up in my eyes. I had wished so much for him to be the father of my child, but I knew that he could never be. He said, "Good luck to you, Diana, and to your beautiful baby girl, take care now." He walked over to the self-checkout area to complete his purchase while I stood there watching him walk away for the last time. Last time, it gave me the closure I needed, even though it wasn't what I really wanted. In the hope of preventing others, both women and men, from repeating my terrible, life-altering mistake. I thank you all for listening and wish you the best of luck in your relationships. Relationships. Diana, I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I've been in a relationship with my 30-year-old husband for almost. I've been with my 30-year-old husband for almost 6 years. We tied the knot within a year of meeting, and we now have 2 children. Truly an outstanding individual, handsome, highly educated, with a well-paying job, and he has never betrayed my trust or disrespected me in any way before the recent events. My close friends and family often remind me how lucky I am to have met him and what an incredible guy he is. As soulmates, however, about a year ago I made a significant mistake. I went to a birthday party with a group of friends and got extremely drunk. Birthday party and I got extremely drunk. During the evening there was a man who had been flirting with me all night. He flirted with me all night and I ended up sleeping with him. It was the first time in many years. I felt so good, and I can't explain why, but I ended up going home with him within minutes of realizing the mistake I had made. I quickly ordered a cab home and tearfully confessed everything to my husband. At first he remained silent and calm, but he made it clear that he wanted a divorce. Pleading and begging, we finally decided to seek counseling sessions. He often seemed disconnected, spending his time scrolling through his phone, and when asked about his feelings or what he could do to improve the situation, he would respond with remarks such as divorce, maybe a wife, or give negative answers. He seemed apathetic most of the time and remained silent even when we asked questions or tried to involve him in the conversation. I understand the mistake I made, and for the past year I've been doing everything I can to save our marriage. Possible to save our marriage, it's gotten to the point where I've even agreed to engage in sexual activities that I strongly dislike. Just to please him, I've taken on all the household responsibilities, including cleaning and cooking. I've done everything he's asked me to do without complaint. During his outbursts, he hurls hurtful insults at me, sometimes so loud that our children can hear them from their bedrooms. Completely ignores me and moves around the house as if I don't exist, but he always treats our children with love and he avoids speaking negatively about me to them and tries to shield them from our fights. Sometimes when I refuse to do certain things, he will threaten divorce and abandonment or bring up my past infidelity and blame me for our problems. For our problems, he insists that marrying me was a mistake and resorts to derogatory name-calling. That he has been communicating with other women, and when I confront him about it, he immediately brings up my past. I have no concrete evidence that he is seeing someone behind my back, but I just wish things could go back to the way they were. Things could go back to the way they were on one occasion when I confronted him about a message I saw from another woman. On his phone, he forcefully took my hand and led me into the main hall, pointing to the door and telling me that the exit was right there. Was right there if I wanted to leave, emphasizing that he didn't care about my thoughts or feelings. I've lost the caring and loving husband I once had and he's turned into a completely different person. Deeply and can't see myself with anyone else. I regret my mistake every day and all I want is to get my family back together. I'm not sure if I can save this marriage, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for right now, maybe I just need to vent. I wish I could go back in time and undo all of this. I forgot to mention more details about our therapy sessions. I want to make it clear that I take full responsibility for my actions during those sessions. And did not blame him. It was only later, when the therapist suggested that my husband may have done things to push me away, leading to my infidelity in his current behavior, that things began to change. I'm considering changing therapists to give our relationship another chance. I really want this to work. Update: today I decided to have a conversation with my husband, as many people have suggested. It seemed like he didn't want to make an effort anymore and just wanted to move on. With the intention of explaining the whole situation, expressing my understanding of his pain, and acknowledging that he might not want to. No longer wants to work on our marriage and prefers to move on, I told him that if this is truly what he wants, I will accept it and allow him to move on. I made sure to convey that I still love him deeply and always will. He remained silent and looked at me, then came over and hugged me and tears welled up in his eyes and I couldn't help but cry. It was also the first time in a long time that I felt a heartfelt loving hug and saw real emotion from him after that. After what felt like a few minutes of crying and holding each other, he finally let go and asked me to sit with him. Began by expressing that he still loves me with all his heart and cares deeply for our children, though he admitted that he was struggling to forget and move on from what had happened. He explained that he was experiencing intense, angry moments, and not only because of his resentment for what I did, but also because vivid images of my actions keep replaying in his mind. To make it harder for him to let go, he confided in me that over the years he had met many women who had flirted with him and that he had had years and had numerous opportunities to stray from loyalty, but he insisted that his love for me and our children had always. He insisted that he could never have done to me what I did to him because his love for me and our children. I did to him, because his love for me was too deep to cause such pain. He went on to explain that something inside him was broken and could not be repaired. With other women over the past few months, but he had refrained from any physical involvement with them because he didn't feel it was the right thing to do. It was the first time he felt that I truly understood the depth of his feelings, and he was deeply shaken. Inside, he expressed uncertainty about our future together, but indicated that he wanted to be single for the time being and explore his own life. Perhaps he mentioned that we might reconcile in the future, but for now he needed to focus on self-improvement. Apart from me, I assured him that I would agree to sign the divorce papers if he would. To sign the divorce papers if he wanted one, and that I had no intention of asking him for anything I wanted. I wanted him to keep what he brought to the marriage, and I had no desire to take that away from him, even though he was making significantly more money than I did. I was adamant about not burdening him with financial support, including child support. Listening to all this brought him to tears, and he expressed his hope that one day he would find it in himself to forgive me. To forgive me, he believed that some time apart would be beneficial for both of us, allowing us to reflect on our lives. He mentioned that he intends to consult with a lawyer and expects to file divorce papers in about a week. I have no intention of pursuing new relationships after the divorce, nor do I desire to do so. My sincere hope is that one day he will return to me and we can rebuild our former family, and I deeply wish he hadn't found out. The weight of regret over this incident is heavy, and I feel like I've lost the one person who is truly my soulmate. Soulmate, all right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. It seems that a divorce is in my future. The events I'm about to recount happened 8 years ago, in 2014, for privacy reasons. I will use pseudonyms for everyone involved. I am currently 39 years old and happily married to my wife Jill. She's been married for 4 years, she's 29, and we have 2 sons, ages 1 and 3. I also have 4 older children from my previous marriage to Amber, who is also 39. These older children include 3 boys and 1 girl, ages 17, 15, 14, and 10. Most of my story revolves around the 10-year-old, whom I'll call Seth, so let's rewind back about 11 years. My wife Amber and I already had 3 children and were expecting our 4th. Seth's life was busy but satisfying. We had a young family and I had recently taken on more responsibilities at work, which allowed us to buy a house, an SUV and a van. And it gave Amber the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. However, it also meant that I had to work long hours, including weekends, despite my busy schedule. I always made sure to spend quality time with my family and did my fair share of childcare and housework. Throughout our marriage, Amber seemed content and often told others that she was there. There were times when she seemed overwhelmed, and it was during these times that I, along with our parents and her sister, stepped in to provide. And her sister stepped in to support her whenever she needed a break. It is important to note that the decision to have 4 children was a mutual one, with Amber playing a significant role in that decision. Things seemed to be going well, but life got busier and busier. Our household was always in chaos, especially after Amber decided to get a puppy. We decided to get a puppy for our children, especially my 3 older children who wanted a dog and were pushing for one. Our home was a vibrant place with kids, a dog, and frequent visits from extended family. As Seth grew up, it became clear that he didn't resemble me, my wife, our other children. He had blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and a fair complexion that set him apart from the rest of the family. Of the family who had dark hair, brown eyes, and darker skin due to our Italian heritage. Understood that looks can vary within families, but this difference stuck in my mind. Occasionally they would make light-hearted jokes, suggesting that Amber might have had an affair with the mailman or something. Similarly, it was all in good fun and we didn't take it seriously as time went on. To make a long story short, before he turned 2, I secretly arranged for a DNA test to determine his ancestry. The test results came back indicating that Seth was not my biological son. Painful day, and I cried profusely for obvious reasons, although I wasn't completely shocked. Clinic and inquired about the accuracy of these tests. The clinician mentioned that such errors were extremely rare. However, he suggested that we take another test to validate the initial results, which we did, and the second set of results confirmed the same result. My life was rapidly unraveling and I was faced with the dilemma of what to do next. That many people might criticize me for this, but my initial plan was to do nothing, to simply ignore the situation. I thought I could continue living my life as usual to see if I could come to terms with this revelation. I followed this approach for a period of 5 weeks, during which time I did not confront the revelation. During this time, I refrained from confronting my wife, behaved normally, and even maintained a regular intimate relationship with her. Eventually, however, my thoughts overwhelmed me and I felt an urgent need to take decisive action before I could. Before I could handle it any longer, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney and gave her all the details, including the results. With all the details, including the DNA test results, she inquired about my wife's reaction, and I admitted that I had not confronted her because I hadn't confronted her because I wasn't sure I wanted a divorce, until the attorney suggested that I confront her with witnesses to hear her side of the story, but I was determined to end the marriage and decided not to follow that advice. I followed this advice, understanding that if I confronted her, I might weaken and give her another chance instead of proceeding. At the divorce, the attorney inquired if I knew who the affair partner AP was, and I informed her that I did not. Suggested that I check phone records, emails, texts, etc. for possible clues. She clarified that under our state laws, since I was married when Seth was born, I was his legal father, although he is not my biological child. She further explained that the only remote possibility of being relieved of my parental responsibilities would be if 1, the biological father voluntarily comes forward, or 2, my wife files a paternity. With limited time to conduct this detective work, I decided to hire a private investigator recommended by PI. Hire a private investigator, PI, recommended by my attorney, in just 1 day of reviewing our computer and cell phone records. The PI successfully identified the affair partner. The evidence collected by the PI revealed that the affair began on a dating site, one of the largest at the time, where Amber created a profile under the alias Elsa 25, where her bio falsely claimed that she was single, had no children, and was looking for casual encounters. The profile remained active on the site, although all pictures had been removed. Messages with several men on the site for nearly 3 months. It was truly disturbing that most of their interactions consisted of casual conversation and mild flirting, with the exception of the man she was having the affair with, who we will refer to as Bob. He lived 23 miles away and worked the 3 to 11 o'clock shift at a factory, which coincided with Amber's day availability for communication and their rendezvous at his apartment. All their interactions took place through the dating site. It is worth noting that Seth bears a striking resemblance to Bob. Amber informed Bob that she did not have a phone, claiming that she had lost hers and hadn't replaced it. This was clearly a tactic to avoid being tracked. From her messages that she abruptly ended contact with him after their 3rd date, although Bob continued to send her messages to her, she never responded, and he eventually gave up, unaware that Amber had set up notifications from the dating site to a Yahoo email account, but she never checked the email. When the PI ran a routine check on Yahoo.com, all the emails showed up on the screen. The screen that hired this investigator turned out to be a wise investment at 9:50. With the evidence he uncovered and the DNA test results, I had all the proof I needed for an at-fault divorce, and I authorized my attorney to proceed. I had a plan to serve Amber with divorce papers in the presence of both sets of parents. Some might see this as a less confrontational approach, but I had lost trust in my wife at this point and was concerned that she might react irrationally or make false accusations if we were alone about the situation in advance, so that they wouldn't be surprised and could support me. Highly charged and my nerves were on edge, but I held myself together. Test results and then provided copies of significant messages that had been exchanged between Amber and Bob. She looked at me with a dazed expression, wore a sad, apologetic look, and silently cried. I think she had a mental breakdown that day, maybe something like PTSD, because she wasn't quite the same. As the tension in the room began to subside, Amber expressed her deep remorse and asked for forgiveness. Explaining that she loved me and our family more than anything, I told her I forgave her, but then handed her a separation agreement. I explained that I wanted a legal separation of 6 months and suggested that she stay with her parents for the next 2 weeks to give me some space for reflection. That after the initial 2 weeks with her parents, she could return to our house to complete the legal separation. However, I made it clear that one of my parents would be with us at all times because I no longer trusted her. I then gave her the divorce agreement and told her that she needed to hire a lawyer. Her mother asked if there was any way to avoid the divorce. Her mother then argued that while her actions were terrible, they weren't significant enough to end a great marriage and disrupt a beautiful family. I responded by saying she had cheated, had another man's baby, and lied to me for over a year. Had another man's baby and lied to me for over 2 years, how much more significant can it get? With my wife begging me several times a day not to go through with the divorce. During the separation, my attorney was able to contact Bob, who expressed deep remorse and claimed he had no. Amber was married. He stated that he had no intention of breaking up a family and was struggling financially. Struggling financially, making it impossible for him to support a child, it became clear that he would not voluntarily assume. Regarding the reason for the affair, Amber's sister informed me that Amber claimed she created the dating profile only to get attention from men and had no intention of being unfaithful. She mentioned feeling insecure about her appearance after gaining weight following the birth of our 3 children. And she wanted to know if other men would still find her attractive. It's worth noting that I had never. I always reassured her that she was beautiful because, in my eyes, she really was. Fast forward 8 months and our divorce was officially finalized. My attorney requested an equal division of assets, but omitted alimony. Assets, but omitted child support from the settlement due to her infidelity and the affair. For my 3 biological children, although it was expected that the judge might require support for Seth. Since I was his father, the judge ultimately ruled that I had to pay child support for Seth as well, but alimony was excluded from the settlement because of the infidelity and the child born of the affair. The judge allowed me to keep the house as part of the settlement. To keep the house as part of the agreement, but granted Amber 51% primary custody. Judge asked if Amber and I had any questions or comments. Amber took the opportunity to express her remorse once more. She further emphasized her love for me and her hope that we could one day be reunited. My gratitude for her thoughtful sentence and for giving me the opportunity to speak. Perceived as an injustice in our state's family court laws, emphasizing their apparent bias against men. Fairness of a situation where a woman cheats, has a child with another man, deceives her husband about it, and yet. Not only is she awarded primary custody of his children, but he's required to financially support a child who is not biologically his. In response, the judge conveyed her understanding of my perspective, but clarified that she was following the law and prioritizing the welfare of the children. She stated that in this case, it was in the child's best interest for me to continue to be Seth's legal father, and she praised me as a good man and a great father. Into her decision to grant me 49% custody and allow me to keep the family home. The only way the court could relieve me of my legal parental responsibility would be if the biological father. She also noted that even if such a scenario were to unfold, the court would conduct a thorough evaluation of the biological father's mental and financial fitness. Before making any decisions, I then informed the judge that I had already provided the court with the biological father's name and address. I asked if this information was sufficient to at least initiate a court order for a DNA test. The judge clarified that this was a civil matter and that the courts do not normally intervene in this way. She explained that either my ex-wife or I would have to convince the biological father to come forward voluntarily. Or my ex-wife could file a paternity suit against him. At this point, my ex-wife's attorney chimed in. Her client's reluctance to involve another man in her child's life, asserting that Seth already had a wonderful father in me. Statement with the feeling that everyone in the courtroom was essentially telling me tough luck, deal with it. Courtroom exchange to encourage any man considering marriage to thoroughly research the laws in his state. When the hearing ended and I was officially divorced, I continued to fulfill my child support obligations and continued to be the best father I could be to all of my children, including Seth. Despite the circumstances, I treated him no differently because he was my son and I was the only father he had ever known. A few years later, I met and married Jill, and we had our 2 boys, and now I have 6 children in total, and I couldn't be happier. I thank the Lord every day for blessing me with my children and for bringing Jill into my life at the right time. As for Amber, I forgot about her a long time ago. These days she's focused on being a mom and taking care of her elderly parents. Since our divorce, she has gained a considerable amount of weight and was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which requires her to take daily medication. Before I got serious about Jill, Amber made numerous attempts to win me back, even going so far as to try to manipulate the kids. Over the years, she has apologized countless times. She admitted that the affair was the worst thing she ever did, and we are now on good terms and co-parenting. Amber is planning to go to school to become an LPN, as she will need a stable source of income when child support runs out in a few years. When each child turns 18, she'll still be driving the 11-year-old van that she received in the divorce settlement, but it will soon need to be replaced. Dated a few older men, but nothing has ever turned into a serious relationship. If you're a woman with 4 children, that's all I wanted to share with you, so I'll leave you with this piece of advice. If you're a man considering marriage, take a moment to stop, collect your thoughts, and make sure you have a wonderful partner, and then, before you make a potentially life-changing decision, familiarize yourself with the. It's a step you won't regret in the future.